Hey up YouTubers, how are we? Welcome back to the channel. Simon B here. Who else could it be? In the garage today. I've had this CCM for a couple of years now, and since I've owned it, the brake fluid hasn't been changed on it. So today on the CCM, we're going to change some brake fluid. So if you fancy knowing how to change the brake fluid on a motorcycle, not only just a CCM, stick around, stay tuned. So you're probably wondering to yourselves, why do I have to change the brake fluid on my motorcycle? Well, I'll tell you a reason why. Brake fluid .4, .3, .5 is hygroscopic. And hygroscopic attracts water and moisture. So what happens is, water gets into your brake lines and into the fluid. The concept of your brakes is to change kinetic force into heat through your brake pads, through your shoes, through your brake discs. So what do you think would happen if you had water in the line between your brake lever and your caliper? Well, it'll get hot, doesn't it? So once it gets hot, what does water do when it gets hot? It boils off. So the water that would be in the fluid would boil off, thus losing volume within your braking system, which will make your brakes fail. So on a motorbike, because the whole system of the front end probably only consists of probably 30 millilitres of brake fluid. So if you get 10% of that of water and it boils off, you're going to lose a lot of volume. So that's the reason why we do it. Dead easy to do, minimum amount of tools. I'll show you the sort of tools that we're going to use. Laid in front of us is some of the tools, or probably most of all the tools that you need to change the fluid on your motorcycle at home. First thing you need would be some brake fluid. Once you open this brake fluid, it has to be used, well, it's advisable to be used completely within, I'm sure it's somewhere around about 3 months. I'll just check if it isn't. I'll put a thing down below of exactly when it's supposed to be. I'm going to be changing the fluid on 4 bikes. I'm going to do my trials bike, my green laner, my WRF. I'm going to be doing CCM, and I'm going to be doing the GS 1200. So £6, that'll do all. It'll do considerable amount. Tools that you need: screwdriver to take the top off the reservoir, a spanner that fits the bleed plug, and don't forget your protection. Guys and girls out there, don't forget to wear your protection. It's nasty stuff is this brake fluid. Keep it away from paintwork, from your hands. Cloth, a couple of cloths are out, it might get a bit messy now and again. Brake cleaner, just have that handy in case you spill anything, you can wipe it straight off. Tools to get the fluid out of the system. This is one of the tools that I usually use. I've used it for quite some time. This is my second one. My other one had actually rusted, so I've just bought a new one. It's basically a vacuum pump. So what you're going to do is use this to suck the fluid from the reservoir out of the bleed plug as it goes together. So from your bleed plug on your caliper and onto your gun. So there's no direct contact to it, and the fluid that comes out of it, that sucks out, will drop down into the container, which then you can safely dispose of that at your local collection points and not down the drain like we used to do years ago. So that's one way of doing it. I find that's the best way for me because I've always used it. The other method that people use is basically just using a long tube into a jam jar, pressing the lever a couple of times, opening the bleed screw and letting out the pressure of fluid. This was off Amazon. It's only a cheap thing. I think it was 15 quid. 15 quid. Another way that you can use is basically a big syringe like this. I saw this on who was it? Del Boy's Garage. So I thought I'd have a go at this. What you're going to do, you're going to force the fluid from the bottom up to the top. This comes with a couple of attachments. So it goes onto your bleed nipple. Fill that full of fluid and you push it uphill. So as you push uphill, you're pushing the air out and up into the top reservoir, which just comes out. Never used it before. I thought I'd have a go. So that's another way that you can change your fluid on it. I'll put a link down below for both of them. You'll be able to have a go yourself because, as I say, this is dead easy. You too can do this. So as well as protection on your hands, you need protection on your bike. So what I've just done here, I've just put an old t-shirt, an old rag around the master cylinder. So it's just a bit of safety measure just to protect the bike from stray fluid. Dead easy to do. Just get it protected. As they say, protect the asset. 2 tools to do this job: your screwdriver and your spanner. I say the fancy vacuum gauge and the syringe, you don't really need it. All you need is a bit of clear hose. That's I just like certain things in life to make my life easier. So I think, as we just discussed once before on the LC rebuild, is the concertina rubber inside, and people are wondering what that is all for. Well, as you lose fluid on it, as we discussed, the rubber concertina's out and stops the air being sucked in, which thus will get moisture into it. So that's what that does. As your brake pads would wear, that takes into account the loss of fluid in the master cylinder. Put that somewhere nice and clean out of the way so you don't get it dirty. As you can see in there, I don't know if you can, I'll show you now. You can see how much fluid there isn't in there. So what's there? About 10 mils of fluid. The lines to the caliper will probably hold another 10 mils, and in here probably another 10 mils. So the whole system's only got like 30 mils of water, 30 mils of fluid in it. If that gets water in it and boils off, that's why you get brake fade, and that's what happens. So that's why we're changing them. So the first thing we're going to do is to take all the old fluid out of that reservoir, master cylinder, whatever you want to call it. I see a lot of people on YouTube that don't take that out, but that's old fluid, and what they would do is just top that up now with new fluid and pull that through. But that's just wasting time. That needs to come out because that's all fluid. And the good thing about the vacuum pump is, as well as vacuuming fluid down to the caliper, you can also suck stuff out, i.e. out of the reservoir. So what we're going to do, we're going to suck as much old fluid that we can out of there. So that's what we got out. So what's there? There's not a lot, is there, in your reservoir? So now that reservoir's got a slight bit of old fluid into it. And what we're going to do now is top that up with new stuff. Once you open your bottle of .4, one of the things that you could do is put a date on it, so you know exactly when you opened it, so then you know how long it's going to last. There's nothing worse of using old fluid. So we're going to top that up. Now you can top it right up to the brim, as I've done there, slightly, probably a little bit too much, but we've got the protection around it. It's going to soak up all the stuff, because what we're going to do is pull that all the way through. So that's not really a problem. When you get to the end and we've got to the position that we've taken 3 of them out of there, down and out, then the last fill up is probably the critical part. So the reservoir's now full of new fluid. So what we need to do now is to get the fluid all the way from the top out of that bleed screw. The first thing I usually do before I even try and get any fluid out, especially on older bikes, is to crack the bleed screw out, because if you can't undo that, you can't get any fluid out. So that's usually the first thing you do. So that should just, so with my thicker spanner, it's catching the brake line, so it wasn't opening correctly. It does now, because this one is a little bit thinner. Clear tube goes on to the end, a little bit of vacuum into it, and then all we do, we got the spanner on it, and all you do is just keep bumping, sucking the fluid out, but just make sure that you don't suck too much out, because that reservoir up there is not so big, is it? So I've taken about 10 mils out. Just chop the reservoir back up. So we'll take some more out. So that's what we've taken out the reservoir, and we've bled the reservoir twice. So it's not a lot. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to empty this tub out, and I would say now we're getting fresh fluid already down through here. So all we need to do is another couple of top ups, and that's the brake fluid on the front, done. Make sure it's tightened back up. You don't want that coming loose, so no fluid's going to come out of it. From that, bit of brake cleaner, spray it on and remove any residue around it. Looks like we spilled a little bit of brake fluid on there. The clips back on, and one of the most important things is put your dust cap back on. Easy as that. Now go and put the cap back on the reservoir. So before you put the top back on, make sure that this sealing surface is clean, extremely clean, because you don't want any contaminants within your braking system. Sometimes if you've put a little bit too much of fluid, you may get a leak out, so don't take your protective cloth off you just yet. And it's only a bit of aluminium. It only needs a little nip. You don't need a scaffold bar or anything, any leverage on it. So now that's screwed down, we've got no chance of leaking. We'll take the cloth off, and as we did before, just in case we may have had a slight spillage of anything anywhere, brake cleaner. Only a little tighten, nothing serious, and just have a wipe around, make sure nothing's leaked anywhere so nothing can corrode, and that's it done. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, as they say. So there you go, YouTubers, changing your brake fluid on your motorcycle. Dead easy, innit? Two tools. That was 11mm spanner. Sometimes it's an 8, sometimes it's a 10, sometimes it's a 13, depending on what size your calipers are. And a Phillips screwdriver to take the top off your reservoir. If you're working on Japanese models, what you really need is, which I've treated myself to, some JIS screwdrivers, which fit the Japanese industry screw. I bought them from the 350 LC, which we did last year. You could do this at home. This will make your bike stop better, brake better, and make it a lot safer. Have a go yourself, it's dead easy. That was only on a single disc, twin disc, exactly the same. Do the longest leg first and then do the shortest leg. The back's exactly the same as the front, apart because you only have one disc on that. If you've got drum brakes, you won't need to do it like on the LC. If you found that video informative and useful, don't forget, please give it a big thumbs up. If you just stumbled across us again, like still 87% of you boys and girls watching this channel, slam subscribe. Do me a favour, go on, do me a favour. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell. Every time I upload a video, you'll get a notification, which is 7:30 on a Saturday morning. I do appreciate it, and I'm humbled of you guys and girls watching this, and I hope you find it really good. Give it a big thumbs up, cheers. Still contemplating on whether to do buy me a coffee or a patrons thing. I don't have time to do a patrons thing. I do have a full-time job. If any of you would buy me a coffee, because there's a thing that for that, comment down below, because like I said I think in my last one, wasn't it, I'd be a bit frightened of doing it in case nobody did. Anyway, if you're out there riding, ride safe, be safe and keep safe, and as they say, we'll see you soon.